Now we go to a different kind of architect somehow. Toyo Ito. First of all, he's Japanese, but born in Seoul, so I guess Korean, or some Korean parentage there. The self-styled, dissatisfied architect born in Seoul. Maybe his dissatisfaction derives from the fact that his wife died, um, rather young, and uh, but why exactly he is dissatisfied, I do not know. He won the Pritzker Prize in 2013, and he finds inspiration in air, wind, and water. Usually, air and water are associated also or connected with the earth and the sky, or the earth and fire. But here he includes the wind, but there is no fire and there is no earth. Air, wind, water. These are the three elements that obsess Toyo Ito. Dwelling for a Tokyo Nomad Woman, I attended a lecture by him in New York, and I wrote an essay then, and if you want to read it, I can send it to you. He was talking about this very project, Dwelling for a Tokyo Nomad Woman. His projects are very different from the projects, most of them, from the projects by Sir Norman Foster. I mean, you would never see Sir Norman Foster occupying himself with such a subject, a dwelling for a Tokyo nomad woman. There is, there are difficulties here in this very program somehow, I mean, a nomad woman, but then you need a dwelling for the nomad woman. Well, the homeless nomad woman, a nomad woman, does she need a dwelling? So there is some kind of oxymoron here at work, but this so-called house is provocative, and you'll see why. First of all, I think, at least in patriarchal societies, in all times, the woman was the repository of the, of what was stable, of the home, in a way. So to have a woman who is a nomad is already shows a moment of crisis. If a man is a nomad, that's almost okay. But if a woman is a nomad, I don't know. I think we are in trouble. And, he envisioned these pieces of furniture, but it's something sad about the loneliness of this woman, of this person, and especially in the context of her, I'm also thinking, why didn't Zaha Hadid have a kitchen in her apartment? Because she didn't. Isn't it strange? In a way, she was a nomad woman herself. Taking the plane, going to China, to Miami, to wherever, in order to build another building. But she didn't have a family, and she didn't have a kitchen in her apartment in London. And of course, she afforded one. So she was a nomad woman, Zaha Hadid, just as this woman is a nomad. And for her, Toyo Ito, a man, thought of creating these interesting pieces of furniture, but these pieces of furniture would not console the nomad woman, I would say. And this is the project. I think this deserves more talk, actually. A dwelling for a nomad woman. Can we solve through design existential problems that derive from solitude and being a nomad? I'm not so sure. But what we see here is provocative. It's like some kind of a tent with the plastics, it's all ephemeral, right? It's almost an anti-dwelling. Now, such poetical speculations, speculative, works, or such a speculative work would not have been the preoccupation of Sir Norman Foster, but it was the preoccupation of Toyo Ito when he was younger. Now, this is a famous mediatek, and we are going to go to this work more in detail afterwards. In fact, that picture shouldn't be there. I don't know why I placed it here. But this also is kind of connected, because you see these columns, they're actually voided in the center. They are voided columns, so actually the core of the column is itself was or is a nomad. Left the column, and only the periphery exists and supports the building, but the core is gone. This is also an interesting work, and maybe it could be connected, speculatively to the previous work, or the work we will continue to see, the dwelling for a nomad woman. The Tokyo restaurant, again, a nomad. Toyo Ito shows that you can do an architecture which could bring you the beloved Pritzker Prize if you indulge in activities of a speculative nature. Okay, he didn't have a client then, perhaps, but he still produced creative work. And here it is, the big city, the very big city that people like Sir Norman Foster build, and within you see the question of the nomadic realities of our time is addressed by Toyo Ito in various projects. Now, tiny houses, again, for nomads. Maybe he himself was a nomad at that time. It's possible. And his beloved, well, because he's his protege in a way, so Fujimoto, maybe you know, but Fujimoto, after he finished his studies, he lived in Tokyo. He was probably unemployed, and he was walking the streets of Tokyo, and he was thinking, what if I make a house or a home where one room is here and another room is 200 meters to the southwest, and the bathroom is 600 meters to the north, east, and so on. A dispersed house, that is a house without a center, that is a house for a nomad, no? And here we see his teacher in a way, Toyo Ito, and you are going to see later a picture of both in Venice, the biennial, proposing various structures for a nomad. Nomadism implies not only lack of mobility, I mean, not only the lack of, an established dwelling or center, but also, I would say, a certain amount of solitude. The Tower of Winds, this is an old work by him, which is was very publicized at the time when it was built. We know that he was and is interested in the wind, the air and the water. This is a tower for the wind, and it's nice. You see this speculative, philosophical, and almost metaphysical side of the architecture of Toyo Ito kind of is not present in the work of Sir Norman Foster. Lucky is him, because metaphysics could also bring headaches and melancholia and depression. And maybe this explains why Toyo Ito declared himself as being a dissatisfied architect. Maybe he decries the absence of the gods, of some spiritual meaning in our lives. It's possible. After all, the nomadic person, is left an orphan on this earth. From the picture, you would have thought it's a cylinder. Well, it's not based on a circle, but on an ellipse. at least the shell. Here he is. Toyo Ito, like other architects, has maybe a little bit of a strange taste for glasses, the frames. But I don't know, a book must be written or a PhD paper should be written about architects and the eyeglasses. Because really, it's a problem. Architects have a problem to choose. The, not so much Raphael Vignoli. Actually, I don't like the architecture of Raphael Vignoli. But when I saw a picture of him with 3 or 4 eyeglasses suspended from his, a pair was on in his hair, one was hanging on his chest, one was on his nose, in front of his eyes. You know, very interesting. An architect who has 3 or 4 pairs of eyeglasses on him. You know, I wonder why. Because you know the medical requirements are served just by one, right? Why would you need several? Strange. I'll show you a picture of I have it here actually, of Vignoli. You see that, Toyo Ito, 2013, the Pritzker Prize. This is the man. He doesn't look indeed very happy. Maybe he was very tired because of the flight, you know, from Tokyo to the States or wherever he received that medal. Um, anyway, but his eyeglasses are the same. Here he is, well, he is smiling here, of course. And the member of the Pritzker family is giving him the medal. I don't think he cared too much about the money because with so many buildings he builds, he is doing well. And here they are, the others. Of course, the other 1st of June, celebrated man is here too, Sir Norman Foster. You kind of know all of them, right? This is Sir Richard Rogers, the former partner of Sir Norman Foster. And then here is the eternally laughing I.M. Pei. Vignoli also laughs all the time, but he didn't get the Pritzker Prize yet. And, of course, the Frenchman, Jean Nouvel, knows the posture he is to have. And Oscar Niemeyer at above 100, he sees the world a little bit differently. Venturi, Robert Venturi's birthday will show up this month as well. Near him is the mystic of our time, Peter Zumthor. Here is Kazuyo Sejima. Here is the womanizer, Richard Meyer. And on the left corner, of course, Frank Gehry. I don't know who this man is, but this is James Sterling. And the only lady besides Kazuyo Sejima is, of course, Zaha Hadid and Herzog and de Moron. And here is Fray Otto, about whom we talked almost the other day. So, the Pritzker Prize. So, the audience, if there are still people here and I don't just talk to myself, please have a good look at this and absorb it, internalize it, and make it as a goal to get it. Not for the in itself. In itself doesn't mean a lot, but some kind of proof that you achieved a certain level of excellence. Yeah. Now, what do you make of the shirt of Toyo Ito? I mean, really, he also built a bench, kind of uncomfortable with what you see here, color spots. There are depressions in the bench, probably creating some discomfort. Maybe he has a sadistic side somewhere. That bench, unfortunately, I don't have it on in this presentation, But if you search on Google Images Toyo Ito bench, you are going to see it. But what do you make of this shirt? you know, uh, I mean, if those things were smaller, you would have said, they could have been kisses by an admirer. But anyway, this is Asia, is the Orient. They have a different sensitivity, and we should accept it. And he looks boyish. He looks fine. Um, Now, in close up, I don't know what that boom means there. Maybe was given to him by design boom, or yeah. Uh, anyway, as I said, he was born in Seoul, so maybe from Korean parents. Here he is again with the two sides of the same coin, that is the Pritzker coin. And now we arrive at a very interesting building, the Serpentine Gallery Pavilion from 2002, so 19 years ago. Here it is. Now, of course, the functionalist would protest, would say, wait a minute, what is this nonsense? You know, why? And I would reply, why not? You know, I mean, we could look at the tree and we could ask lots of questions. Why did God make them this way? This is what Toyo Ito wanted to make, and let him breathe, please. Why shouldn't we also have disorder, not just order? In a sense, maybe this could have been a cube, no, or a square building, but he went against that, and that's what he got. And I don't think it's bad. I actually like it, and the structure is defying the lazy engineer who only knows how to build a structure that has vertical columns and horizontal beams. No, it could be like this, okay? And it is self-supporting, and it didn't fall. Unfortunately, they destroyed it. Well, it was moved to another place after 1 year to make room for the next Serpentine Pavilion. But I like this building by Toyo Ito. And I dislike the engineer who always takes the easy road, and he infects the imagination of the students with his restrictive, recommendations. What we see here is clearly a man who rebels against Cartesianism. And that's what it is. He takes essentially, it's a square building and then cuts it into parts. You have these shards of Cartesianism assembled together in this way. It's fine. I like this building. But again, the one who likes always the easy road but the one who always likes the easy road would never be invited to build a Serpentine Pavilion and would never get the Pritzker Prize either. Would just live in mediocrity, and that's it. In comfort, but essentially mediocrity. Here is creativity. Okay, you might not like it, but you cannot deny its, at least its visual and spatial interest. And he's not repeating himself. You'll see other buildings by Toyo Ito. In fact, you already saw that the previous studies for the nomads were different from what he did here. The Sumika Pavilion. Now, this is similar to but this was built in Japan. And I like it. It's a kind of a coffee shop. It's an approximation in the abstract language of geometry of nature in a way. This is an abstracted tree in a way. And again, why should structure only be with a grid and vertical poles and horizontal beams? Why? After all, you could say that this building, although it is a contemporary building, has attributes that could connect it with a Gothic structure, no? So, anyway, I personally like it. And I'm glad he built it. And as opposed to the serpentine pavilion that Peter Zumthor built, here we see a path that leads to the building that is fragmented and kind of organic, connecting it with what we see also here on the ceiling. And there is, I think, a sensitivity here which unfortunately Peter Zumthor didn't have in the aforementioned work. Not bad. I like it. I personally think Toyo Ito, did a work which would make perhaps even this leafless tree smile if he saw it, but he's on the other side of the building. Now I just noticed courtesy of Tokyo Gas Company. My God, these gas companies are everywhere. They rule the world. Let's face it. Uh, yeah, Toyo Ito, Japanese architect, born in Seoul. It's too bad. I don't think I have here pictures of his office, but his office is the very opposite of what you saw in the case of Sir Norman Foster. He works only with a small number of people in very modest circumstances. Nothing of the glorious institutional machinery that Sir Norman Foster has. No, I think he has 10 people, 15 people at the most, not 1,000, not 3 floors in a glorious building in London. This is the bench actually that I mentioned. Look at this, it's not flat here, and these things are kind of like those pinkish spots on his shirt, but again, this is not flat. I guess it's okay, what are these? These are ornaments, if I am allowed to use the taboo word, they're ornaments. Sorry to the functionalists who think that ornaments should not exist forever and ever and ever and ever. In fact, everything here that is interesting is ornamental, no? I mean, the ceiling, it's structural to an extent, but it's also ornamental. And so are the benches. Look at them here. Why is it that Toyo Ito didn't give up on ornaments, even on his whitish, well, could have been whitish shirt? It's a little bit neurotical, I confess, that the ornament, but it is an ornament. Ornament, ornament, ornament. We should pronounce this word more and more often, maybe together in a chorus, defending the banished ornament. It should come back. Interesting structure, no? Which is ornamental, as you can see here. Bravo to Toyo Ito. I think we should do ornamental structures, really. Sendai Mediatek, this is a very famous work, and you already saw a picture with it, with those hollowed columns. Very interesting work. Yes, he uses a lot of glass, like so many architects today, including Sir Norman Foster, but there are innovations here. And the main innovation is the structure, actually, which is almost a non-structure. And look at these columns, which are actually, in a way, anti-columns, or the opposite of columns, because they are tubes where the periphery is populated by thin columns. So the carcass, the periphery of the column is taking over. Very interesting. And also, they are not really straight. They are a little bit crooked, so to speak. So he has obviously some attraction towards nature, because this is almost an approximation of a giant trunk of a tree. but made of with steel and hollowed. Interesting idea. An interesting idea supported by an interesting structural engineer or a team of structural engineers. But philosophically also is beautiful, because where you expect to have a dense material, the column, you actually have a hollowed column. So it's just the bark of the tree in a way, and then there is nothing beyond the bark. Very interesting. I feel inspired to think more about this. And these are embroidered columns, so to speak. That's what they are, embroidered columns. A unique work, really. I mean, look at the base. Now, of course, the morose functionalists will say, hey, you are eating up space here. Nothing happens here in the center, okay? You are losing space. We can put in more cars here, sir. Don't do this. Don't do it. Well, Toyo Ito would just smile and, like a true Oriental man, turn his back and go someplace else. Nice work, Toyo Ito. Look at these colors. I almost felt tempted to write something or to propose a presentation, since I do nothing else but this presentation called Against Creativity. Now I changed my mind. I would say predictably towards creativity. And look at the plan. Kind of, like the plans, of both Ishigami and Kazuyo Sejima, the playfulness of these Japanese, look what they do inside the square. It's a square, but inside the square, there is playfulness. There is the child playing with that grace that comes from Asia. There is a gracefulness, but there is also technology, but it's not an aggressive technology. There is homo ludens here, there is. Good work. Bravo, Toyo Ito. Nobody did this kind of columns before. Now, again, the functionalist to say, okay, I might accept this, but go for God's sake straight with the same diameter and don't crook them, don't do this. Well, God did them now with the trunks of the trees. So why shouldn't we complicate ourselves as well? But we are not gods, would say the morose structuralist. Well, maybe we are not, but maybe could aspire, sir, to be approximations, no? Would you please allow us? No. That's what the structuralist, the morose structuralist would say. No. Don't be playful here, okay? This is a serious matter. Don't do this sort of thing. I mean, look at these. These are not even straight. They are just a little bit going astray, so to speak, these thin columns. What are you doing here? Who do you think you are? You are not a child, you are a mature person, okay? Fortunately, people like Toyo Ito think otherwise. Now, this is a building done for, again, I shop there for I am. Todd's is a building that sells things, I don't know what, maybe toys, maybe something else. But here again, we see the carcass, which is approximately understood. This is a famous street in Tokyo with trees, which are not very common in Tokyo, but here they are. And this company, Todd's, hired Toyo Ito to build a building that, itself seems to evoke the world of the trees. Nice. And here is the so-called concept. And here are the elevations, which would exasperate the rationalist. The rationalist would protest. say, wait, no, you cannot do this. I want to see straight columns and straight beams, okay? Don't confuse me with this nonsense. Well, again, Toyo Ito, who had an eye on the Pritzker Prize, thought otherwise, and he got it. And the morose structuralists and functionalists didn't, and never will. And I think with good reason. Anyway, in a way, this building is connected with the Serpentine Pavilion that we saw at a different scale. Another building in Tokyo from 2005. I cannot forget his shirt. Now you know why I showed that picture with him with that shirt, white with pink spots. Well, instead of the pink spots, we see the windows. Very freely and playfully and irresponsibly, sir. This is irresponsible architecture, okay? It might be irresponsible, but it's joyous, sir, if you allow me to defend myself. Sir, I would not accept this because I like this. I like to see where the floors are. I want to be able to measure and to go straight from one point to another. Don't confuse me with this playfulness, please. Here is another building. I think this is in Barcelona, actually, by Toyo Ito. And now a public theater, a brilliant public theater, all black. Look at this. This stone, it's a stone, it's a rock. Within it take place plays. Very nice. Very nice. And again, he's irresponsible with these windows, which are not only irresponsibly circular, but totally uninterested in a grid. No, totally. It's fine. It's a good building. Let's confess it. And look at the beautiful dialogue. I think the foliage of the tree is in love with these holes, these windows, circular windows. There is already a love story between them. I can tell. There is a love story between the leaves, the foliage of the tree, and these openings in the black carcass of the theater by Toyo Ito. They are in love. I can feel it. Don't you see it? Don't you see the whispers, the discreet, testimonies of love? The leaf here would say to or the other way. Maybe one of these windows tells the leaves of the trees, "I love you," and the leaves will respond, "I love you too." That's what I see here. It's a love story. It's only for those who like to be playful. For the others, this is not easily observable. It's not seen. Otherwise, yes, it's a black envelope, but it has these touches of playfulness which remind you that what is happening inside is playing. It's theater. It's one of the best theaters I ever saw, actually. And it's probably not even very expensive, I imagine. In essence, it's a black box, but the playfulness brings a new element which makes it enticing. The Ito Museum of Architecture, he built a museum of architecture, and it bears its name on an island. Tadao Ando did something similar too. I mean, these Japanese, I don't know, they are the exceptionalism of the Japanese is obvious. On an island, they build these things all by Toyo Ito, and it's possible his works are displayed here. It's even possible that Brancusi should have loved some of these things, which approximate to an extent the endless column. But it's a building, and yes. as I said, Toyo Ito said that he likes to do buildings where the best is to take pictures of with people in them, not without people, as we see so many other pictures, and including of buildings by Sir Norman Foster. We see the same conjunction between order and disorder. The geometry is there for all to see. The hexagon is clearly defined, but somehow, he is able to distort that geometry and get certain complexities. And here he is. I don't know, maybe at the Venice Biennial. I don't know what he is doing there with those lemons. They seem to be lemons. And here it is. I don't know, some kind of a building or several buildings that are obtained. I mean, if you bring together these parts, you get the buildings. So disorder is connected with order, and they again, without playfulness, you cannot have creativity. And he's playful, and the Japanese build it. And here is the model for the tower, the Tots Tower that we just saw, except that here is black and in reality it was white. It's fine, it's okay. Uh, yeah. The landscape is magnificent also, I mean, another structure by him, different from the previous ones. Truly, these Japanese, they can build anything. They build anything, and they have a turn of the mind somehow different than ours. They welcome, experiments, and I don't know exactly how they can be so apparently uninterested in stringencies of although I imagine they handle them well as well. They are doing well economically, but they have dispositions that go beyond strict utilitarianism, which is something to inspire us as well. I worked for a Japanese man in New York, and his name happened to be also Ito, but his first name was Setsuo Ito, a designer, a hippie actually, who came from Japan. I don't know how he was able to open an architecture office. Well, in interior design office, he was not an architect. He never studied. Extremely hardworking, and he got commissions for the big companies, Sony, Hitachi, Toshiba, and so on. I did something there. Unfortunately, I don't know where I placed the photographs. We did showrooms for these giants taking over the world at that time, and they still do actually. So in my essay, I talked about how a human being has two bodies. One is the physical body we use to drink water, wake up, and so on, perform very primitive actions. The other one is what I call the subconscious body, which is our soul. How very true. Architecture today really needs to stimulate and work around both bodies. Actually, my architecture is still focused on that. I feel it can never be one or the other body. There needs to be an harmony between the bodies, and how that harmony is reflected in architecture is one of my biggest focus. Or is yeah. I talk about the physical and the metaphysical, or the psychic. It's the same thing. Indeed, there are two bodies. There are two realities. You cannot be concerned only with the physical. You also have to be concerned with the spiritual, the metaphysical, the psychological one. He talks exactly about this, about the two bodies. Peter Eisenman would talk about the two-ness, TWONESS, the doubleness of not just the human, but also the existence. You have earth and you have sky, or heaven. You have the physical, you have the psychic. he talks about the same thing, the two bodies, the physical and the subconscious, and they are both needed. This is an interesting museum with an interesting theme and very worthy, a museum for the mother and the child. I would rather see such museums than a museum of the air filled with planes. Um, and look at this here. There are just artworks that address this theme, the mother and the child. It's an outdoor. Well, there is, I guess, an art gallery on the perimeter, but the the sculptures are all encircled. Very nice, and in a place where maybe you would not expect a museum, but I'm glad it is. There is something to learn from these Japanese, I think. There is. And here he is, inside the museum he built. So he moved from the nomadic woman to, a woman who became a mother. And this shows, I think, an evolution. Now, Taiwan Solar Stadium, cantilevered, not bad. Dramatic, I mean, it is for sports, but it is the work of a sculptor here. And it is working as a stadium, but this part of the structure is that the one that makes things special. I mean, architecturally speaking. Again, he's working with a structure which is ornamental. And if you separate ornament from structure, it's not good. And when you eliminate ornament, it's actually tragic. Taiwan. I would say formally he is freer than Sir Norman Foster, although born on the same day. I wonder if they know that they were born on the same day. Two Pritzker Prize laureates. It's like a snake here, this stadium. Now, this important work in Barcelona, the Hotel Portafira. There are two buildings actually, and both are interesting and complementing each other. A more Cartesian one on the right and a more organic one on the left, one whitish, the one reddish. I don't know if Toyo Ito thought or knew about European alchemy, where the white symbolizes the queen, water, the moon, and the red symbolizes the king, the sun, and fire. But it's interesting that he chose two different. In a way, there is something in reverse here, because where there is redness, he used organicity in terms of shape, and where there is whiteness, that is the moon, you would expect here to have the organic, but this makes things even more complex and interesting. And after all, there is the redness here also within the prismatic object, architectural object, although I usually avoid the word object, but in this case, I used it. I don't know if I was very inspired. Anyway, interesting work in Barcelona. And look at the tower. Again, the exasperated rationalist would protest. Would say, wait a minute, don't you see that this is not straight and is not perfectly vertical, and this either, and the windows are not aligned? Yes, sir, I do see it, would reply Toyo Ito. I did them intentionally so, sir. Because I love to be playful, okay? I like to be creative. Okay, do you mind, please? Really, rationalism made life unbearable. Fortunately, there are people like Toyo Ito who think and act differently. He's not the only one, of course, but he's one of those, or one of them. And look at these windows, you know how they are dancing on the facade of the building. In fact, it doesn't even have a facade. It's like the bark of a tree, you know, it's all around. The trunk of a tree doesn't have elevations or facades, you know, it doesn't. And look at this, enjoying itself with its gentle contortions and fluidities. Barcelona. This month we'll talk about two important female architects from Barcelona, Carme Pinos and Benedetta Taliabue. I can't wait. And look at the plan. It's not a circle. It's not. I would say Toyo Ito is slightly more of a poet than Sir Norman Foster, and maybe that this attribute derives from his dissatisfaction with being. Maybe he knows a little more about suffering. I don't know. Now this building was just was completed recently, the Taichung Metropolitan Opera House. I wish I had more pictures from the present, but you can still see the building. Um, again, he complicated himself a lot, uh, as if you can create anything without complications. I don't think it's possible. I mean, Brâncuș aspired towards simplicity, but his life was far from being simplistic. It was complicated. There were hardships. To arrive at simplicity or what is simple is not easy. The one who wants to lay on the sofa and watch TV won't bring anything creative to the world, really. Now, I don't know about these large glass surfaces. You can see I'm beginning to have a phobia of large glass surfaces, but inside the space is more cave-like and kind of like what we see here. It's much more contorted and sculptural and interesting. I hope I have some pictures here. I made this presentation a while ago in the building, but you see here. Uh, Well, it seems the water got into the building, at least during the construction. But who knows? I would expect even the eccentricity to have the water welcomed into the building. But maybe I'm thinking too adventurously now. It's possible. And this is a project, of course. Uh, but it is finalized. The grand opening happened. I like the viscerality of the construction process and site. Look at this, you know, the intelligence, the hard work of so many people in order to bring to fruition, the vision of an architect. Architecture is not really done by one person. I mean, yes, he was the conductor of the orchestra, but the orchestra is made up of many people, and they all should be acknowledged. Look at the complexity of the plan. Within the rectangle, there are many things going on there. Now, my Japanese boss in New York told me that many Japanese men in Japan have ulcer because they have such complexities in their stomach, but they don't express them. So the expression towards outside is, kind of like this rectangle. And because of the turmoil within, they develop ulcer. I don't know. That's what he told me. But the truth is, the Japanese have the longest, longevity in the world. So I guess they can handle something quite well. Uh, I just read that the last slave in the United States was also the person with the most appreciable longevity in the United States, like 100, almost 130 years, and he was the last slave. I'm not trying to suggest that slavery is good for longevity, but isn't it strange that the last slave in the States was also the person who lived the longest in the United States? Now look at the section through this building. I still can't forget those pink spots on his white shirt. In a way, these tunnels within the building have the function of those pinkish spots on his white shirt. But it's an interesting conception, of the building. We see here those two bodies that he talked about, the so-called subconscious and the so-called conscious. We see both here in interplay. The snail, unfortunately, this was abandoned and nothing happened. It's in Spain. Too bad, because it was a nice building, the snail. Look at this. It was abandoned. I think it never functioned, and it began to, be vandalized, and people stole I'm not saying that that person necessarily stole from it, but it became a ruin. You see the rusted iron there, and the very interesting building, the snail, which the Spaniards built, but it was never functioning, and I don't even know if it exists even as a ruin. Now, the museum in Mexico, this is dedicated to Baroque art. Unfortunately, it's a little bit too whitish for, as far as I know, the Baroque art likes its spirit to be not just, I don't think, I mean, it's a white building, maybe excessively white. There is playfulness in terms of forms. There are certain fluidities, but not so much vertically, but horizontally. Somehow it makes me think of the school that Zwiefka built in Berlin, which seen from above is more interesting than seen from the level of the eye. But it still has a certain movement, and it's more gentle than some distortions by Frank Gehry. I don't think it's one of his most interesting works, and maybe even not the most typical, but it's a good work, I think. Now it's a funeral hall, which surprisingly is white or whitish. So those who associate death or the funeral with blackness, here they would be a little bit surprised. The roofing, is maybe a metaphor for what might happen to the soul after death. It's a gentle building. It's a building that is not, dark. It's a meditation on the finality of life. And I'm sure he suffered a lot when he lost his wife. Uh, we're approaching the end of the presentation. Um, and here again, we see the two worlds, the two bodies that he mentioned. The roof represents one of those bodies, and what is underneath the roof, um, the other body. When I commented negatively on the asphalt that Peter Zumthor poured for the path in front of his serpentine pavilion, I was referring to exactly this kind of, you see, here is a more sensitive way of providing some access to a building than what that, very blunt pouring of asphalt that Peter Zumthor did. Now, the Venice Biennial in Japan, for the Japan Pavilion in 2012, and you will see here also a picture of him with other young people, and he proposed and he even initiated such an action in Japan to build inexpensive dwellings for and with people. And here we see models of such sustainable, houses. And this shows, I think, his almost his vernacular side, because I think in Toyo Ito there is, despite the sophistication of many of his buildings, there is a certain sympathy, a certain affection for what we might suggest through the word, the vernacular. Look, models of possible, possible housing. And it's an interesting idea, and Su Fujimoto employs it in various projects he does, where he doesn't have, where there are negotiations between the horizontal and the vertical through transitional entities, like here. So, the house becomes a hill or a mountain even, and, there are intermediate entities between the vertical and the horizontal. Uh, they're dreamers. And what would architecture be without dreaming? Mud. Home for all. This was an initiative he had, and it's a beautiful one. It's a noble one. Home for all. Didn't he evolve from a home or a dwelling for a nomad to home for all? And he actually started to act in this way. So he's building these things with young people, maybe students, maybe other people. And look at this sketch. I don't know if he did this drawing or not, but it's truly about building together houses that are not in a morose way, intellectualist or so. No, they express the simple joy of being alive. And it's almost an anonymous kind of architecture. And maybe using his own money, or I don't know, but you can tell there is some kind of a here grassroots utopian vision. Here they are. And here he is too, probably, I think, the fourth person from the left. And we'll see them in Venice. Yes, here he is. So here is the architect as a social worker, as a militant, as an activist, because he doesn't want to serve just an elite. He also wants to serve, anyone, home for all. And I love this about him. And look at the people, working with their own, hands with maybe primitive tools, I don't know, working together in order to build something that this generous architect thought of. Here they are with him, the second from the left. Goethe in Faust, he asked himself, when, I mean, Faust asked himself, which, at what point would he want to say, to tell time to stop? And it was exactly then when he understood that it was when you give yourself to society, when you give yourself to other people. And if you do that, you could indeed say, time, stop, please stop. I arrived at the essence of life, at the summum of life, the crux of life. And this is what I see in this picture. Toyo Ito, a Pritzker laureate, descending, so to speak, from the Olympus mountain of exceptionalism, between people, being together with them. This man here is Fujimoto, Su Fujimoto, the young architect who himself is on his way towards stardom. But it's not about stardom, it's about doing good work. Maybe they even prepared the soup here, I don't know. And here they are in Venice at the Biennial. Playful, eternally playful, but also useful. It's not the kind of playfulness that says no to other functions of life. In fact, as you already know, he advocated the two bodies, architectural bodies, not just one. This is Fujimoto, Toyo Ito. And they got they got the Golden Lion. Bravo to them and bravo to him. You cannot do this sort of thing if you only think of rules and regulations. No, you have to be playful and discover and rediscover the roots of life. Now, the university library in Taipei, unfortunately here, in my opinion, but I don't know, in Asia, perhaps they have a different conception about what we might call in Europe plagiarism. But here, the resemblance to what Frank Lloyd Wright did at the Johnson Wax building is striking, and you will see a picture of that too. Maybe it's architecture's quotation, a quotation which doesn't mean copying, although it appears to be that, but actually an homage. It's possible. For me, I'm still undecided about this. The jury is out, as the saying goes. But the similarity is obvious. But it's possible that it's a gesture of affection towards what Frank Lloyd Wright did, and we are going to see what Frank Lloyd Wright did. I wonder what Frank Lloyd Wright would have thought of this. So this is the building by Fujimoto, by Toyo Ito, sorry, and you'll see soon the building at Johnson Wax by Frank Lloyd Wright, with mushroom columns, as they are called. But this is, they are slightly distorted, but in essence, it's the same thing. So this is the interior of the library in Taipei by Toyo Ito. And this is Frank Lloyd Wright. in Wisconsin. I have seen this building. Well, I arrived there on a Sunday and I was timid. I didn't enter, but I saw it through a glass door. And this is, it's obvious that this building preceded what Toyo Ito did. Uh, yeah. So this is Frank Lloyd Wright, and this is Toyo Ito. Years later, maybe half a century later, or more than half a century later. Frank Lloyd Wright. And now I'm not going to talk to you about Kengo Kuma. I had a presentation on Kuma here too, but that is on his birthday. So thank you very much for being here.